going to have the world's leading expert on hydrogen come in and talk to you. And he's going to explain this in more detail than you're going to want to hear. This is something for the record.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. Joel Odou on behalf of the Will Kemp defendants. As the court may recall, there was a motion for summary judgment that was denied as to motion to stress bystander claims of parents. I had spoken to plaintiffs' counsel about their openings. I believe Mr. Mirkovich may reference his opening. Rather than interrupt, I just wanted to place my objection on the record now. He had no objection to me objecting now. So I just wanted to place my objection now that obviously the record speaks for itself. We objected to those. We filed a motion. I'm not going to supplement that at all. I'm just going to incorporate our reference unless the court needs me to elaborate.
So I denied, and I'm asking because I honestly don't remember.
No problem.
I denied your motion for summary judgment on this. Is that what?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
There was a motion for summary judgment. There was also a motion to strike. We had argued that some issues were untimely. The court denied that motion. I just don't wish to waive those objections if they come up during opening. I believe Mr. Mirkovich may at least raise it. So rather than interrupt, I just wanted to put that on record.
Okay. Gotcha. Anything?
No, Your Honor, I appreciate Mr. Odou raising it now. He's obviously welcome to object.
Yeah, thank you both. So based on your ruling, the objection overruled, certainly record preserved. Anything else before we bring folks in?
Just a small matter, Your Honor. I don't think we'll take for a second. I provided my opening slides to defense counsel, just so they can take a look at it. It probably won't be for another hour and a half to 2 hours before I get to speak, of course. But I brought a copy to the court. I don't believe there's going to be anything to be objected to, but if there is, I think it'll be minimal. But I thought in the abundance of caution, I can give it to the court, so that something is raised by the defense counsel, the court would have a copy as well.
Sure, that makes it easier for me. Yeah.
Thank you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
Yeah, on my slides, we're just going to comply with the rule of file after the opening. I don't think that we'll be able to just want to do that it's in the form of fashion or another.
Anything else?
That is it for me, Your Honor.
Perfect. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now I can call you ladies and gentlemen of the jury. So welcome back, and thank you as always for your service with us. All of us very much appreciate everything you all do. So our plaintiffs ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, we seem to be missing one person. What are we doing? So yeah, we are missing a person. We should have 12 total. Naomi, no, 11.
What was here? I just talked to him.
A break that we didn't anticipate yet, but the admonishment, you'll.
Judge,
No,
he's outside.
okay. Maybe we'll be. The parties stipulate to the presence of the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Are plaintiffs ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Kemp, in case you didn't remember. At this time, I'm going to be doing what's called the opening statement. And basically, we're going to try to review the evidence you're going to see in the next 2 weeks. Okay? And don't feel bad if you don't remember all of it, because you're going to see it over and over again. So don't try to take furious notes. But this is just basically a general outline to try to help you put things in context. Okay? Trying to show the whole movie, so when you see the scenes coming up with each witness, you'll understand. All right. So I want to start by showing you a video that raises a grave question. In late 2020, There was a mystery involving dozens of Nevadans. It took public health authorities months and months to provide some answers. And let's start with the mystery. Can I have a video shoot? So the question raised by that video is, what happened to this baby? What happened to this baby? And to answer that far-reaching question, we have to start with some medical facts. Shane? So there's 3 critical medical emergencies that people can encounter. 2, I think you're pretty familiar with. The 3rd, I think, is involved in this case. I'm going to explain it in a second. Heart attacks, 805,000 persons every year in the United States. 375,000 people die. Strokes, attacking the brain, 795,000 people in the United States every year. Liver attacks, which what we're dealing with in this case, it is called acute, means sudden onset, fast, acute liver failure. Only 2,000 persons in the entire United States every year. Now, this is a case about acute liver failure. And you're going to hear this term ALF over and over again because it's shorthand. You'll see it in the medical records, ALF, or acute liver failure. Okay? So this is the liver. This is where the liver is in the body, and kind of here, more on one side than the other. Next, Shane. And so what the liver does is it basically processes, blood goes in the liver, it basically processes out toxins, does other things. So let me explain a little bit about how the liver works. The liver is one of the most important organs of the body. It has 500 different functions. So the critical functions that you're going to hear about in this case, detoxification. It takes toxins out of the blood, okay? And it processes proteins and biochemicals. That's also important in this case. If you don't have a liver, you do not survive, period. You do not survive. And the reason for that, Shane? The blood doesn't properly clot because if the liver's not processing the blood, it loses its clotting ability. And the toxins and chemicals build up in the blood. And as I'll explain in a second, when they build up in the blood, they have to go somewhere. And we're going to explain where they go next. And then all the body's defenses against infection fail because the liver continually makes the proteins and enzymes that you need to fight infections. So if the liver doesn't work, you have a problem. And then the swelling starts, including swelling of the brain. We're going to talk about that a lot because some of the plaintiffs in this case suffered swelling of the brain. Next, Shane. So you can't replace the liver with an artificial organ or device. You know, they have parts they can transplant into people now and certain other parts. But as of now, medical science cannot do anything if your liver goes down except cross their fingers and hope you get better, or alternatively, give you a liver transplant. They take a liver from a stranger and they stick it in your body. Okay, so when you have acute liver failure and it doesn't improve, this is what happens, transplant. Now, acute liver failure, it's a critical medical condition. You have complete loss of liver function in days or weeks. It's not a situation where the liver function is gradually going down over a couple months. It's quick, okay? Usually it happens in persons who have not had any liver disease before. And when we get to the 5 babies, you'll see that none of them have liver disease before. Next. So it's a medical emergency. They rush you to the hospital, usually by ambulance. They throw you in the ICU. In this case, it's the pediatric ICU, so you'll see that in the medical records. It's PICU, PICU. That's what that means, pediatric ICU. And again, acute. It stops working rapidly. It fails. Next. So we talked about so these are the symptoms you see: extreme fatigue, jaundice, which means yellowing in the eyes. You know, you'll see pictures of some of the plaintiffs. You'll see how their eyes are yellow. Okay, loss of motor functions. They can't move. They're bleeding. They lose consciousness. And the increased pressure in the brain. So this is one of the big medical words that Mr. Parker was telling you about: encephalopathy. Encephalopathy. All that means is that your brain is swelling up. So you're going to see that in the medical records. In fact, I can show you a couple in a minute where the doctors were diagnosing encephalopathy for some of the plaintiffs. Next, Shane. So again, it's rare, very rare. Only 2,000 cases in the entire United States, not just 2,000 cases in Nevada or California or the Southwest region, 2,000 cases in the entire United States every year. All right. So what happened here, Shane, is the Southern Nevada Health District was contacted, and this is right in the middle of COVID. So imagine this. This all happened in the fall of 2020, right at the height of COVID. The hospitals were packed, people were worried. So all of a sudden we have another outbreak right in the middle of COVID. So they start an investigation of this. Go ahead. This is the defendant in the case, Real Water. Real Water, I think you've already figured this out. They made a water product that was called an alkaline water. All right, and then they made certain claims about the water. But this is one of the claims they made. All bottled water companies claim their water is the best and healthiest. However, there are 3 very important questions you should ask before buying bottled water. Your personal health and the health of your children depend upon it. And I'm just putting this up here to emphasize to you that they market this as being good for children. Okay, and that's why so many families here in Clark County use this water for their children. They want to give their children the best. This company told them that it was the best, and that's why it was used. Go ahead, Shane. So, what happened is that's a hospital on the right there. That's supposed to be a hospital in Salt Lake City that you're going to hear about. It's called Children's Primary Hospital. That's where all 5 of the children went to for the emergency liver transplants. So the arrows are intended to depict the fact that they left Las Vegas and they came back after their treatment there. So what happened here is there were reports to the health district from a doctor. Can I have the next one, Shane? This is Dr. Guthrie. You're going to hear his deposition in the case. He's a doctor, a hepatologist. Those are doctors that deal with the liver, hepatologists. So he's a doctor up in Salt Lake City, and he's at Primary Children's Hospital. Now he treated, I think, 3, maybe 4 of the 5 children, but he treated a number of them, but he was the guy in charge up there. So he treats all these children from Las Vegas, jet transports for liver transplants in a 6-week period, and he says to himself, this is unusual. You know, there's only 2,000 cases in the whole country, and I'm getting 5 cases of children from a medium-sized city like Las Vegas, all in this constricted time period. So he realized maybe there's a common pattern here. So again, we're in the height of COVID. He did the right thing. He contacted the Southern Nevada Health District. And you're going to hear from his deposition a little bit about his treatment of each one of the babies, and then about his contact with the health district. Jake? So, all 5 of these children, I'm going to show you their ages in a second. All 5 of these children, young, previously healthy, no problems whatsoever, no indication of any problems, much less a liver problem. And so, what happened to this baby? Next shade. So the doctors and Mr. Parker told you a little bit about the Southern Nevada Health District and the CDC investigation. So the Southern Nevada Health District, the CDC, the FDA, they all came in here and they launched a big investigation to try to find out what happened here. So what they determined is that this baby and the other 4 babies had acute liver failure. No question about that. That's not going to be disputed in the case. Next. So now they do what's called an exposure assessment, okay? And some of you have the epidemiological background. You know that what that means is they're trying to figure out what it was that these babies were exposed to, and the other plaintiffs too, there's more than just babies. What were they exposed to that caused this acute liver failure? So they looked at everything, you know, what they ate, whether they were bitten by bugs, whether they were exposed to animals, just looking for a potential cause. So the Southern Nevada Health District interviewed each one of the 5 families, and they found one thing they had in common. They all drank real water. They all drank real water. So that launched a bigger investigation. So the Southern Nevada Health District people, they wanted to see, well, is this just these 5 people? Is it 10 people? What's going on here? So they did what's called a query diagnostic codes. And if you see, these are codes that the hospitals use to describe certain kinds of procedures and illnesses. Okay, you know, back in the old, my dad was a doctor here since the 50s. So back in the old days, we didn't have all this stuff. When they started Medicare, you know, the government loves numbers. So you have all these diagnostic codes now. So what the Southern Nevada Health District did is they can access every computer in every hospital in Clark County. They just push a button and boom, they're in those computers. And so what they did is they ran a query on liver failures that were not explained. They went back and they looked, the whole community, at all the hospital records, and they wanted to see if there were lots of other liver failures they were missing over the years, because they wanted to see if this was a bigger problem than just these 5 babies. Next, Shane. So this is what they found. Okay, this is a document you'll see. This is going to be Exhibit 1. It's already admitted. And just to explain, their documents are going to come in and artifacts, and they're going to be called exhibits. Okay, and so you're going to get those all. You get to take them back in the jury room, or you can look at it on a computer that they're going to provide to you during deliberations. But anyway, this is Exhibit 1, and this is what's called. You see the top where it says Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. Okay, this is a publication by the CDC that comes out every week. Goes out nationwide, and so you'll hear to it usually referred to as the MMWR. That's the shorthand. But again, this is Exhibit 1, and you'll see it. It's going to describe a little bit about what I just told you about the children and everything. But this is what they found when they did the diagnostic codes. Okay, they found a number of unexplained cases of acute liver failure. And if you take a look at the big peak right there in November 2020, that's the exact time frame we're talking about. So you see the reference on the right is the numbers. These are how many they found. And so that gave them confidence that it wasn't just an isolated problem, but it was a systemic problem that was affecting a lot of people. So after getting this huge red flag, you know, from the 5 babies, the phone call from Dr. Guthrie, they launched this big investigation, and this is what they found. And now let me turn real quick to some of the plaintiffs in this case. Okay, Shane, can you on the next slide, please? These are the 5 children that were all flown to Salt Lake. Okay. Severin Morales, Chris Noah Wren, Hera Carrier, and Lyric and London Williams. They're twins. They're, I think what they call is fraternal twins, not identical twins, but they're twins. Okay. So when I showed you the video earlier, that was Lyric. Right? That was Lyric up there in Salt Lake. Right. These are 5 in plaintiff case. They all had acute liver failure. Next, Shane. So let's start with how old they were and the basic dates of hospitalization. So Severin was 22 years old when they see the problems, and they take him to Summerlin Hospital on November 14, 20. Chris Noah Wren, 2 years, 8 months old. He goes to Mountain View November 15. Hera, 5 years old. She's in Summerlin November 20th. Some of these people went to hospital multiple times. I'm going to go through each one of them in a little more detail here, but I'm just trying to give you kind of a general picture for when the problems arose. Lyric, 7 months old. They take her to Sunrise once, they take her in twice, and in London, she's the day after. So let's go through the medical records in a little more detail. The first one's Severin Morales. Okay, Severin's not going to testify, but his father will. But this is from the medical record. So Severin had a severe case. Remember I said encephalopathy, the brain swelling? He had a severe case of that. So what they did is when they got him in the hospital, they were trying to figure out, you know, there's a couple causes of encephalopathy, and acute liver failure is not the only one. So they stuck a needle in the back of his neck and they drew a sample to try to figure out what it was. You know, this is pretty much a description of that particular procedure. Next, Shane. So you see, previously healthy, 22 months, he goes to someone in the ER, he has liver failure. See that little LFT there? Okay, that's gonna be a big term, I'm gonna explain that to you in a minute, what LFT means. So yesterday he goes to ER, second episode. This is the second time he's had the altered mental status. Again, you get the brain swelling, your brain doesn't work right. That's what that's all about. Next. So this is what they diagnose, encephalopathy, okay, brain swelling. They do an MR of the brain, you know, the doctor's trying to figure out what's going on. Next, Shane. So these are the ASTs and ALTs. AST is a really long 3-word medical term that when we get Dr. Hudson, one of the experts out here, he'll probably use it a couple times. But for our purposes, lay people call it ALT and AST, okay? Those are measurements of liver function, all right? So if you take a look at Severin's measurement, he has AST of 3942, ALT of 886. Next, Shane. So let me explain briefly what a liver function test is. You know, to determine whether your liver is working properly, they can't just go in and grab the liver and shake it. So what they do is they do a blood test called a liver function test. And so that is an attempt to show the extent of liver damage. And you probably all had AST and ALT tests as you have a test every year from your doctor. So these are the 2 most common ones. There are other ones, but these are the ones we're going to be talking about in this case. So this is norm, okay? Normal people, this is the normal range. ALT 12 to 78, AST 15 to 27. So ALT, the high end, 78, AST, the high end, 27. That's normal. That's what everybody should have. So when you have acute liver failure, when your liver's not functioning, usually, not always, but usually you have an extremely high ALT or AST. That's the big red flag that there's a liver problem. Next, Shane. So here's Severin. They measured his ALTs, I showed them to you a second ago. So they decide, we've got to transport this kid right away because he needs liver transplant, or at least he needs to be evaluated. So they do not do liver transplants here in Nevada. It's a very arduous operation. It takes about 12 hours, sometimes as long as 20 hours. But I mean, they've got to hook and unhook so many arteries and veins and put the new liver in. It is a really difficult operation. Dr. Hudson will probably explain it a little bit, but they just don't do that here in Nevada. So what they do is they send people out of state, and if they decide there's nothing else they can do and the patient's not getting better, liver transplants are the only ones that are done. Usually children go to 1 of 2 hospitals in the West. They either go to Utah Primary Children's Hospital, which is one we're already talking about, or they go to California, USC, or Stanford, and I think there's one in Denver that started doing some work. But you can't have this done here in Las Vegas. And time is of the essence, as you can imagine. Your liver stops working, your brain's starting to have encephalopathy, time is of the essence. That's why when they think there's a potential for liver transplant, you are on a flight for life, Okay, they're not waiting for you to get a ticket on Southwest. You go out to the airport, nurse flies you up there to Salt Lake. And then they take an ambulance, they meet them at the airfield. The ambulance runs them from the Salt Lake airport to the hospital, and the doctors jump on them. So this is what all the patients were, all the children were facing, a potential transplant operation. So when you have a liver transplant, remember I said you're taking the liver from a stranger and you're putting it in yourself? Well, your body doesn't like strange objects, all right? So the body attacks the stranger's liver. And to make sure that the body doesn't destroy the stranger's liver, you have to take what's called an immunosuppressive drug. I can give you the names, but I don't think that's that important right now. But you have to take them every day for the rest of your life to keep this stranger's liver from being rejected by the body. So sometimes it fails, and it's not always a successful operation. The success rate's higher in children. Usually there's a 58% chance of surviving in 15 years. That's the general success rate. Again, it's a little higher in children. Yeah. So this is Severin on the Flight for Life. I mean, you don't have to be a doctor to see this kid's got something going on. So this is after he goes to the Las Vegas hospital. The doctors decide they have to do the transport of Salt Lake. Next thing. So he gets up to Salt Lake, and this is what they find in Salt Lake. And this is a medical record. This is going to be an exhibit in the case. If you see the little numbers to the right there. So when you get these back in the jury room, if you want to go through them, you'll see that each one of the plaintiffs is Morales, and there's a number, and it'll be carrier for Hera Carriers, number, Wren C for Chris Wren, so that's what you can tell them apart. Their names are also on it, but that explains the numbers there. So they get them up to this, I don't know, it's a solid the other one. But anyway, they're doing a liver function test. I already gave you the normals, all right? Look at these results, 2404, 1230. These are high, extremely high liver function tests. And this is how they knew there was potential acute liver failure. Next shame. So they get them up there, Salt Lake. You're drinking the good airplane water, the good hospital water, and not real water. And what happens? You get better. So his liver function came down a little bit. That's still high, especially the ALTs up there. But after being up in the hospital for a couple days, it came down. Go ahead, Shane. So, he had acute liver failure, unclear etiology. Etiology just means cause. That means unclear cause. They don't know what caused it, even though they did a workup. And so now he's recovering, but he's got ammonia. Okay, ammonia is a tip-off for encephalopathy, because what happens is the liver processes ammonia. So if the liver is not functioning, ammonia builds up in your body. So when you have high levels of ammonia, that's a tip-off that you've got some kind of liver problem and encephalopathy. And then it says normal coags. Remember I told you sometimes it affects the ability of blood to coagulate. But that's what that means, coagulate. So that was normal. Next Shane. So next day they tested him. Again, he's on the high side, but it's coming down. Next one. So this is their assessment plan. Had liver failure, and he had a liver biopsy. So what is a liver biopsy? All right, because two of the people in this case, two of the children, Severin and Hera Carrier, had liver biopsies. They don't like doing liver biopsies. That is like an extreme type of procedure. So what happens when they do a liver biopsy is, remember your liver's right here. They take a needle and they go, and they pull out part of your liver, and they send it to the pathology lab and they analyze it. Okay, that's what a liver biopsy is. So they did a liver biopsy to Severin, and they really don't like doing liver biopsies on children because, children remember things like this, all right? So now his LFTs are normal. Again, that's liver function test. INR is normal. That's just kind of a balancing test for the liver function test. Ammonia is 16, 50 today. You know, pneumonia's not great. So he's intubated on arrival. They had a tube in him. They take it out in the morning. Okay. Next shape. Oh, well, let's go back 7 minutes. So anyway, again, we're at the height of COVID now, so they decide to discharge him. So he was actually in the hospital twice. He went up, they flew him up to Salt Lake. They did all these tests on him. Even though his liver function tests were pretty high, they discharge him. Family brings him back to Las Vegas. And then the very next day, they fly him back up to Salt Lake again because they could see there's still a problem. So he actually had 2 plane rides up and back. Okay, go ahead, Jim. This is Chris Noah Wren, okay? Okay, I'm gonna give you a little helpful hint here. There's gonna be 2 Chris Wrens in this case. There's the father, Chris Brian Wren, and there's the child, Chris Noah Wren, okay? So Brian is the father, he came first. Noah is the child, he came second. B is before N, so B, the father, came first, Noah, the child, came second. So you're gonna see the medical records for Chris Noah Wren. So remember I was telling you how they are? See on the bottom right there? So when it says Wren CN, Chris Noah, that's the baby. And when it says Wren CB, which we're gonna look at one in a second, that's the father. So he comes in, his father brings him in, he's been vomiting for 3 days. And this is common, you know, the body, when something toxic comes into the body tries to get rid of it. So you will see that all the plaintiffs vomit. Usually it's this explosive vomit, you know, that hits the back of the wall. But that's in the medical records too. So these are the problems. He comes in, you know, temperature's not that big of a deal. We have a little bit of problem with Chris Noah Wren because he has autism. You know, this is one of the worst subjects you'd want to have to run into a hospital emergency situation because he has autism. So tough to communicate with them. So parents are doing the best they can. Next, this is at Mountain View again. We're still in Vegas. So they measure his AST. Here's the normal, 57, 59. Now some of you write this down. You may notice that these high-end figures change a little bit from hospital to hospital. There's hospitals, some of them say 59 is high on the ALT, some say 78. That's not important. We're so far above normal, you know, it's just not important. But that's why there's a little bit of variance there. So anyway, this is what he's measured. On the AST, he's 3,713. On the ALT, 544. High, extremely high. Next, good. Shane. So here's him and his mother on the, that's Emily. She also got sick. I'll talk about that in a second. But that's Emily on taking him up to Salt Lake. Okay. So this is one of the Salt Lake records, comes from the life flight. That's what they call these emergency jet flights. Concern for liver failure, talk about vomiting. Next. So they measure him up there. He's actually getting worse, okay? And that's pretty common, all right? You'll see a lot of the kids have measurements here in Vegas, and they actually get to the hospital, and the next day, they're worse the next day or the next 2 days, and then they start coming down. So now he's at this AST of 4,193 and ALT of 1,043. Again, these are extremely high liver function tests. Kids in serious condition. Next, Shane. So, you know, I told you Dr. Guthrie made the phone call because he was the one that found the common pattern. You see it right here in the medical records. The doctors up there in Utah, they're starting to put this together. Acute liver failure, unknown etiology, multiple times among 3 different patients presenting to the same pediatric intensive care unit from a similar geographic area, Nevada, over 2 weeks. So the doctors up in Salt Lake are starting to put this together, and that's why they call it something about health teacher. Next, Shane. So he's improving, etiology is unclear. They wanted to do a liver biopsy on him too, okay? But parents didn't want to do that. Again, he's an autistic, it's an autistic situation. So they didn't want to do that because they just thought it would cause more problems than it would potentially solve. So there's no biopsy done on him, there's just one done on Severin and Hare. Next. Okay, this is Hare Carey. I'm gonna be explaining a little bit to you about her situation because I'm trying to put in context with the other 4 babies. Mr. Mirkovich is gonna tell you a little bit more about the family situation when he gets up. So she goes up to Summerlin Hospital, vomiting 3 times a day, dry heaving. Again, this is pretty typical of what all the children went through. So Tuesday morning, I think 1 o'clock in the morning, they take her in. Patient was brought to the hospital early Wednesday morning. I guess that's Wednesday morning, 1 o'clock. She's been vomiting since Sunday. So they take her in. Go ahead, Jim. So, pretty high, AST, 5,746, ALT, 419. Again, this is the first measurement in Summerlin Hospital. Next, Shane. So, Summerlin ED, that's emergency department, vomiting. So she's transferred to the pediatric intensive care unit. Thank you. And then she's got worsening mental status. Remember I told you about encephalopathy? Hare had a bad case of encephalopathy. You see the description of the pneumonia there? So they suspect liver dysfunction. She's getting worse, okay? This is still in Summerlin. She's getting worse. Now she's got an AST of 6,000, an ALT with 4,000, which increasing T-billy, that means bilirubin. That's another measurement they use to measure liver distress. And ammonia, the ammonia is up to 59 now. So this child is getting sick fast, all right? Next, Jim. So they discharge her and they send her up. At the time of discharge, this is unbelievable. AST goes up to 12,335. This is something like 450 times the upper end of normal. I mean, this is really, most doctors in their lifetimes will never see an AST like this, okay? And again, back to these liver function tests, normal ALT here is, AST is 27, so hers was 12,500. I mean, anyway, so they go ahead, Jim, next. All right, so they talk to the parents about how she possibly needs a liver transplant. They just didn't want to, they knew they couldn't handle this here in Vegas, so they sent her to Salt Lake too. Next year. But before they send her, they do a biopsy. They stick the needle in her liver and pull out a sample, and those are the, this is a quick comment. This is not the whole biopsy report, but it's a quick comment. I'm just showing it to you because right away, they say acute injury secondary to drug or toxin infection. So right away, they were thinking, oh, there's some toxin going on here. The overall features do not favor a chronic process. That means something that develops over a long period of time, weeks or months. So the doctors right away knew it wasn't chronic, it was something that did quick. Next. So Hare got sent up to Salt Lake City for the liver transplant. And I've already gone through this. Go ahead, Jim. Who we got next? Lyric. Okay, Lyric. Again, these are the identical twins. They can't testify, but their mother will be here, and she's going to testify. So Lyric is the first one who got sick. So these are her. Again, here's the normal range. Remember I told you the upper end jumps around depending on which hospital it is. So she's at 5,393, 800. So, they treat her, they discharge her, put her in the intensive care unit. She has what they call acute encephalopathy. That means rapidly developing, it starts fast, okay? So she has acute problem. They do a brain scan, because brain swell up, they think maybe there's something, you got hit or something, they don't know. So they diagnose acute liver failure, and then they say hepatic, that means liver, okay? Hepatic means liver. hepatic encephalopathy, so the brain swelling is caused by the liver. Critical illness, constant monitoring, so they thought she was gonna die. This was Sunrise. Quote, this is doctor speak for this patient's in critical condition. Quote, failure to provide this level of care may result in further organ system dysfunction or death, unquote. So they, go ahead, Shane. So they sent her up to primary children's again. So these, talking about the labs, they tried to put a catheter in her, didn't work too well, it started bleeding. As you'll see, it bled the whole way on the flight. Wasn't a good situation. Next. Okay, so this, the live flight, that just means that's the emergency jet flight from Vegas to Salt Lake. So persistent bleeding, again from the catheter. Ultimately that didn't turn out to be a big problem, but at the time it was very concerning. So, doesn't open her eyes or cry. You saw the video. You saw the video of the condition she was in. So go ahead, Jim. And this is her sister. So Lyric went into the hospital, came out of the hospital, went back in Sunrise, I think it was on 12/3, and then the very next day, London goes into the hospital. And the mother, Shantae, is gonna be here. She's gonna tell you that she was feeding them formula. They were 7 months old at the time. She was feeding them formula made out of real water. Both, same formula. Lyric just reacted first, London second. So same thing, vomiting, projectile vomiting, what I told you about before. Twin sister, similar symptoms. Emergency transfer to Utah due to liver failure. So that's the same thing they did with London. Next thing. So they get her up there. She's got 2,075, 435, very elevated. I mean, there's, Mr. or Severin Morales was higher. Eric Carrier was the highest of all of them. But this is high, okay? Anytime you get in the 2000s, it's very high. Next thing. So they do a different kind of procedure, they're trying to figure out what's going on up there. So they basically they take an ultrasound and they run it over the liver. Okay, they try to do some imaging, and here's what they find. They find that there's an indeterminate hypoechoic lesion measuring 1.2 by 0.8 by 5 centimeters, noted in the liver adjacent to the main portal vein. Okay. What is a hypoechoic lesion? Hypoechoic just means they're shooting the sound waves in and they're finding an area in the liver that's not bouncing the sound waves back, so it doesn't echo as well. That's what hypoechoic means. But so they find something solid in the lesion. It's pretty big, 1.2 centimeters is about half of an inch. That's a pretty big lesion. Now, but the most alarming thing, and Dr. Hudson's going to talk about this a little bit, is look where they find this. They find it right by the main portal vein. This is where the body's bringing in the blood to process, to try to clean things up. So if you have a toxin, this is where it's going to hit first, okay, when it goes to the liver. And this is where they find the lesion, relatively large lesion. Next thing. Okay, so she's got all these problems. This is talking again about the lesion. Go ahead, Jim. Same finding that they made for the sister. We've got to get this baby up to Salt Lake or she's going to dysfunction in that. So they got a private plane, they sent her up there. Next. She gets up there, she gets slightly worse. 2422, 718. Again, like I told you, the day or two after they hit Salt Lake, most of things got a little bit worse. Next. 7-month-old twin, unexplained acute liver failure, uncertain etiology again is cost. So the doctors didn't know exactly what was going on. Next. So here's the chart. These are the total hospitalizations of all 5 children. So, and some of the children were in 2 different hospitals on the same day. because they discharged him from Summerlin and then they sent him to Salt Lake on hour-long flights, so they admitted him on the same day. So I'm just counting total hospitalization. There's a little bit of overlap, there's days. But Severin was there 15 days. Remember I told you he went to Salt Lake twice and said that. And again, I don't blame the doctors for this. It's COVID, hospital beds are at premium at this time. You know, sending him back even though they probably shouldn't have. I'm not blaming the doctors. Okay, so Severin's in there 15 days. Chris Noah Wren, 6 days. Harrah's 12 days. These are the hospitals here and in Utah. Okay, this is combined. Laird's 13 days and London's 13 days. It's pretty much the same. You know, Christopher Wren's in there a week, the rest of them are in there about 2 weeks. But all told, 59 days these babies are in the hospital in the pediatric intensive care unit. Next, Shane. So these are the other 3 plaintiffs in the case, starting with Christopher Brian Wren. Okay, I told you the memory trick, right? B, Brian, that's the father. Okay. So Chris was an extremely heavy real water drinker. He's going to tell you how he took it to his place of work and had it in his office and drank it during the workday as well as having it at home. So he gets sick first. He gets sick in August 20. And again, his ASTs and ALTs are nowhere near what the children's were, but they're high, 206 and 53. So anyway, he has the same symptoms. He's vomiting, he's fatigued, he has yellow eyes. And they check him into, I think it's Summerlin. Next one, Shane. Oh, excuse me, Mountain View. I remember the good old days. There were only 3 hospitals here. My dad was chief of staff of all of them. You know, now there's so many hospitals. It's like these high schools, you know. But anyway, 38-year male, no significant medical history, complaints of nausea and vomiting, non-bloody vomiting for 4 or 5 days. Pain is radiating. Okay. His AST at this point in time is 3416 and 1176. Getting up there. Okay, the bilirubin and the INR, those aren't good numbers either. Dr. Hudson's going to tell you about them. They did a CT scan, and they found what's called hepatic steatosis. Okay. Just for now, remember that word, steatosis. Okay? Putting a marker out for future point. Steatosis. Go ahead. This is another measurement, pretty high, 3416, 1176. Next. You know, he's been vomiting for 4 to 5 days. You know, some sort of liver failure. You know, but you know, Chris is a hard-headed 38-year-old, so he said, "Get me out of this hospital." You know, probably shouldn't have happened, but he got out of the hospital relatively quick. Next. Even though the AST was this high, 4,800, they let him out of the hospital, which, you know, I mean, this is in August 2020. Lots of COVID patients need beds. I'm kind of surprised they let him out of the hospital at this level, to be honest. Next. He's going down a little bit on the AST, but the ALT's even going up even more. Next. So that's his case. I think he's in the hospital 4 days in total. Not as serious a case as his son. Okay, he wasn't flown for an emergency liver transplant evaluation. But serious case. Okay, this is Emily Wren. This is the wife. Go ahead. You know, she's just got the symptoms: generalized weakness, fatigue, lightheadedness. And you know, at the end of the case, when we try to put some numbers on this, she's going to be on the low end, right? But she does deserve some compensation. But these are her symptoms, and she's in there about the same point in time the son is. So she's in there at the same point in time. See November 12th, 2020 up there. Remember, he was November 15th, 2020. Next. This is Mr. Chicano. He's sitting back there. In fact, the Wrens are back there too. Got you this. Mr. Parker's going to explain his injuries to you. Next, please. So these are the plaintiffs in the case. that have suffered acute liver failure. Okay. Excuse me 1 second, I'll let you know, catch up. You know, I used to be able to do 2 hours just off the top of my head, but I'm getting old. Okay, and Mr. Mirkovich is going to talk to you about the carrier plaintiffs a little bit, so he's also going to talk about one of the experts. I'm going to skip over that. So, plaintiffs had 2 things in common. 1, they all got acute liver failure. 2, they all drank real water. So let's start out with how the public health authorities figured out what it was in real water that was the potential cause here. So this is where I'm going to explain to you about a chemical called hydrazine. Hydrazine. Okay? You probably never heard that term. 2 weeks from now, you will be so sick of the word hydrazine. Okay? But so we're going to talk about hydrazine. Go ahead, Jim. This is a chart from the Southern Nevada Health District. They're talking about the common signs of acute liver failure: nausea, vomiting, dizziness, weight loss, vision problems. Is there more, Shane? Second page. Okay. And so they took the list of potential causes. And one of the potential causes, go ahead, Jim, right there, hydrazine. Hydrazine. Next one. So in Greek mythology, the Hydra is an 8-headed monster that lives in the murky waters off some island in Greece. I can't remember which one. And if you remember right, you cut one head off and another one grows. And finally, next thing, you know, this is one of the, I can't remember how many things he had to do, 8 or 10 or 12. But one of his tasks was to slay the Hydra. So he cuts off all 8 heads at the same time. So I'm just giving this to you so you can remember the word Hydra. Hydra. Hydrazine is a chemical that has 2 nitrogen atoms. Okay? We're going to have the world's leading expert on hydrazine come in and talk to you. And he's going to explain this in more detail than you're going to want to hear. But for now, just remember that it has 2 nitrogen atoms. Now, what do they use hydrazine for? Hydrazine is rocket fuel. Hydrazine is rocket fuel, okay? That rocket on the left, or excuse me, that is a picture of the moon landing. I don't know whether you believe it happened or not. Okay. But that fuel that was used back in the 60s and 70s to send up these big Apollo rockets was hydrazine. The fuel that Elon Musk uses right now to send up these SpaceX rockets is hydrazine. It's rocket fuel, okay? And the problem with hydrazine is that it's toxic. When you take a small amount, just a small amount of hydrazine, and you inhale it or you touch it, it is toxic. Now, since it was used as a rocket fuel, the United States government did an extensive series of tests on hydrazine in the 60s and 70s. They fed it to rats, they fed it to dogs, they fed it to all kinds of animals, you know, guinea pigs, mice, anything they could get to drink it, they fed it to, and they studied what happened. You know, this is just what the government does. So, one thing they found is it was toxic to the liver. Hydrazine causes acute liver failure in small doses. So we're going to bring an expert in to tell you a little bit about the government studies dosing of hydrazine, kind of the mechanism that it works to cause acute liver failure. And his name is Dr. Kosnet. We might even get him on later today, okay? You know, if we get him on later today, that's a good sign. That means we're on schedule. If we don't get Dr. Kosnet on later today, we're falling behind schedule. So this is Dr. Kosnet, next year. So he's what's called a toxicologist. So it's just like what the name says. He's a scientist that studies toxins, their effect on the human body and animal bodies. So he's board certified toxicologist from Colorado. He discussed all the scientific literature, the government reports. You know, the Russians, of course, had to get in on it. They did some testing too. But he's going to tell you all about it. And he's going to tell you that hydrazine causes acute liver failure if it's consumed by human beings. So, you're probably asking yourself, how could a bottle of water, like real water, have a rocket fuel like hydrazine in it? Good question, okay? How could a bottle of water have a rocket fuel in it? Next, Shane. So, I told you the CDC, the FDA, the Southern Nevada Health District came in and they did a big investigation, and I give them credit. This is all during the height of COVID. They came in here and they addressed this problem, okay? So the go ahead, Jim. So this is what's called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. Gas chromatograph, see, I did it without thinking, Shane. Gas chromatograph and mass spectrometry. Okay, this is basically a machine that they use to test what's in substances. So it's going to be referred to in this case as a GCMS for shorthand. GCMS. Okay, next thing. And that's the gold standard. That's how they identify what's in a substance. So if you're testing a food product or a water product, or they test almost everything using this. In a lot of the big food manufacturers use this to test their products because they want to make sure before they sell something to the public that doesn't have anything that they're not sure of. And usually it takes about 3 hours. They stick it in the left side there and it breaks it down into some kind of gas, and then somehow or another goes to the right side. They push all these buttons. I've actually seen one used once, but I couldn't do it. Next, there's tens of thousands of these across the United States. Okay? Tens of thousands. UNLV has a couple of them. There's a number of them in Vegas. But in 2020, there's tens of thousands of these. Common test machine. Next. So here's what the FDA did. They came in and they went out to the Real Water facility, which was in Henderson. And I don't know if you're familiar with that Ocean Spray plant. It was right by the Ocean Spray plant in Henderson. I can't remember the address. So they took samples of what's called the concentrate. And I'm going to explain in a little bit what the concentrate used to make real water was. This is basically a bottle of what they used to make the real water. This is the concentrate. So this is what the government took the sample from and tested. I'm going to get back into this, but I just want to show you before I show you the test results. So they found hydrazine, 1.44, 1.75, and then they tested a third sample. So 3 out of 3, 1.33 hydrazine. So all 3 of the samples of the concentrate that was used to make the real water that the FDA tested had hydrazine in it. And this was done in the FDA laboratory in Cincinnati, where they do a lot of this kind of stuff. You see the date of the test there. It was done in October 2021. So it took them a while to do the testing, which I don't fault them for. You know, we did have a big thing going on. Next. So, one of the points, and this isn't a disputed fact. They did not do a GCMS test at any time. They being real water. Never. When the product was first brought to the market, during the course of the time prior to the outbreak, there was no GCMS test done. Next, Shane. Next. So they got complaints from some customers, and we're gonna show them to you. One of them complained that the water had a gasoline-like actually two of them. The water had a gasoline-like substance in it. Yeah, I wonder what that was. Okay, even after getting complaints like this, they didn't do any type of GCMS testing. Instead, they did bacteria tests. That's all they did, bacteria tests, which, I'm glad they did the bacteria test, but, why don't we do a real test and see what's in the product? Next thing. So, hydrazine caused the acute liver failure suffered by the 5 plaintiffs. Again, we're going to have Dr. Cosnet in here, we're going to have Dr. Hudson in here. I don't think Mr. Odou is going to dispute this. This is what the problem was. See the two orange things there? That's the 2 nitrogen atoms. Remember I told you hydrazine has 2 nitrogen atoms. And that's important just because it breaks down, relatively quickly. That's why it's a good rocket fuel. So next. So in addition to the FDA doing some testing, this laboratory called Eurofins, you see on the top right there, you're going to hear the name Eurofins mentioned a couple times. Eurofins, E-U-R-O-F-I-N-S. They're one of the big private labs here in the United States. They've been in existence for about 50 years. They have offices in 20 different cities. So they tested retail bottles. Real water came in 5-gallon jugs of retail bottles. They tested some of the retail bottles, and they found hydrazine in them. And that's important in a little bit because the Williams twins were drinking from retail bottles. The Wren baby, I think, was 5 gallons. I think Hera, I think she was both retail and 5 gallons. But it didn't matter what they tested. They found hydrazine in. Next. This is just another Eurofins test. Next one. So, back to my first question. What happened to this baby? The doctors in the Southern Nevada Health District and the CDC found that the baby had acute liver failure. Next one. Baby drank real water. That's not disputed. Next. FDA found hydrazine in the concentrate, and Eurofins found it in the retail bottles. Next. And hydrazine causes acute liver failure. We're starting to get the puzzle here, right? All right. So we're going to call Dr. Hudson. He is a hepatologist. I think I told you before that he's going to explain a little bit about how these liver transplant operations work. But he's board certified. That just means they have to pass some big 5-day test. But he's done lots of liver transplants. I don't know if he's done 1,000 yet, but he used to actually work here in Las Vegas. He worked at Children's Primary one time, not at the time in question, but at one time. I think he's back in West Virginia now. So he's going to tell you that the hydrazine in real water caused acute liver failure suffered by the 5 babies and the other plaintiffs. That's really not a big dispute, but we're putting him on for completeness. And then he's going to talk about the injuries that result when you have acute liver failure and the medical issues on all the plaintiffs. Go ahead, Jim. So what happened to this baby? I think we got the 5th and final point. The hydrazine in the real water caused the acute liver failure. And I don't expect any of this to be disputed. Because real waters agreed to liability and causation. Now, they have agreed to liability for compensatory damages, okay? And what that means is they have agreed that they will be responsible for what you determine to be compensatory damages. So when you get the verdict form, there's going to be the names of all the plaintiffs on there, and you're going to have to figure out an amount for each one of their damages. Okay? We'll get back to that in a second. But they've agreed to compensatory damages. They have not agreed to liability for punitive damages. So that's going to be the second issue for you. First, you're going to be determining the compensatory damages. Then you're going to be determining yes or no on the punitive damages. Mr. Parker told you punitive damages, slightly higher standard, clear and convincing. It's not just the scales of justice and feather. It's our burden as the plaintiff to provide clear and convincing evidence that they acted wrongfully to the point that there should be punitive damages. That's our burden, okay? And we are going to ask you to check yes on the punitive box. And next year, so let's talk a little bit about real water, because it's necessary to kind of get into the manufacturing process a little bit to explain to you what they should have done and didn't do. Like, this is a 5-gallon jug of real water, which I don't know if I want to try to lift it or not. Move it back here a little bit.
Everything was good.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. So they made a number of sizes of the bottles. They made both the 5-gallon, which was home delivery, and then they made retail bottles, which came in 3 different sizes. And those were sold in places like Terrible Herbs, Whole Foods, Costco. The 5 gallons was only home delivery. That wasn't sold in the big retailers. The retail bottles were. So this is the actual product itself, real water. All right. Now, how do you make real water? So there's 4 basic steps. Okay? And if you don't follow this all at this point in time, don't worry about it. Dr. Najib is going to explain it to you, and you're going to have all these steps down in your minds. It's basically juice, mixed test, but you'll have it all on your mind. So the first thing they do is they electrolyze purified water. So what does that mean? So they take water, comes from the lake, and they purify it. They run it through what they call a purification machine. It's the technical name of it's an AP3000. It's just a standard water purifier that's used all across the country. So they make what's called purified water. And then, this is important, then they electrolyze it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to separate alkaline from acidic. So they electrolyze it, and they put it through this tube. Do we have the tubes? Okay, maybe we do have the tubes. They put it through this tube. The tube's got a little diaphragm, a dam, divider in it, inside of the tube. And so the water goes out in 2 different flows. One flow is acidic, because that's the positive electric charge. And the other flow is alkaline, because that's the negative charge. Okay? So they hook it up and they do it again. Then they do this whole process over again. They do it twice. They do it twice. These are the tubes. We're actually going to have the inventor here. His name's Mr. Marlowe. I'll tell you about him in a minute. And he's going to explain these tubes to you. So basically what happened is, these are 2 of them. They hook the water up. Do we have a picture of that, Shane? Do we have a picture of the holder? I hate going off script, but so this was the actual device that real water used. So see those little clamps? They put the tube in the clamp and held the tube in place, and then they put the purified water through the tube continuously for 8 hours. And during that 8-hour time period, they're applying the constant electric charge, and that is separating it into acidic and alkaline water. And they do that twice. This is what they use to provide the electrical charge. Nothing fancy here, pretty similar to what they use to jump cars. Okay? But they hooked up the jumper cables to the titanium tubes, and for 8 hours they ran the water through, trying to separate. So they started out, not sure. Okay, so let's take the first step. So they take the purified water, and remember, purified water is purified. There's nothing in it. There's no chemicals, there's no residue. It's pure water. So since it's pure water, it can't hold an electrical charge. So what they did is they put some kind of substance, some kind of chloride substance in it so it would hold the electrical charge. So they take the purified water and they dump this in, Then they start putting it through so it can hold the electrical charge. And the reason they wanted to hold the electrical charge is, like I said, they're trying to separate. Okay. Now, Dr. Najim is going to explain this all to you. And hopefully, he's going to be here Monday morning? You good Monday morning? Okay, Monday morning. So Dr. Najim, I've already referenced him. He is one of the world's experts on hydrazine. He has written the 2 leading papers in the world on hydrazine. So he's got a doctorate degree in environmental engineering. He wrote the 2 leading papers. He's going to tell them about. So he's going to explain this 4-part process. Judge, if I may block you, just 1 second.
Upside down.
Is it upside down? Okay. Okay, this is the chart that Dr. Najim prepared to illustrate how this works, okay?
Your Honor, can the jury pool stand up and look down, or do you want us to first pick it up for them? I was trying to,
Can't see.
I know the people in the back can't see the bottom.
I mean, if somebody wants to hold it, I guess that's fine.
I'm gonna
Do
try
you have an
this.
easel with the one?
There we go.
Yeah, you
Well,
know.
that's good.
All right. What? Eric, we don't have a little bit.
You don't need some assistance.
I know. Okay. All right, so we start out here with tap water, like me. They filter it, make it into purified water, then they put it into this holding tank, 300-gallon holding tank, and then they do the first step. Goes up, goes through the titanium tube, they juice it, and this takes 8 hours. They do this for 8 hours, okay? And they juice it, and then they divide it into 2 different types of water, alkaline and the acidic. The acidic just goes down the drain. So they just keep the alkaline. So since they're cutting the 300 gallons into half, they get 150 the first time around. Then they do it all over again. They take the 150 and they cut it in half. Again, it takes 8 hours. They cut it in half and they get the 75 gallons. And that results in what we call the concentrate, which you'll hear referred to as concentrate, super sauce, secret sauce. There's a couple ways it's referred to. So then they take the, I think that's enough there. And Dr. Najim will go through this with you. The important point, I think, is that the concentrate is always prepared at the same time in what's called the concentrate room by the same person. He's going to testify how he did it. And they take the concentrate, and then they use the concentrate to mix it into yet more purified water, and that's real water. They take, I can't remember if it's 1 part of concentrate in 300 gallons of real purified water, but every single drop of real water is made by using this same concentrate. And that's important, okay? And the reason that's important is because remember I told you the FDA found hydrazine in the concentrate? Well, if hydrazine is in the concentrate, it's in every bottle of real water. So that's why that's important. Now, again, it's our burden to prove bad conduct. So here are the 4 points we're going to be focusing on. So they didn't do, I've referred to it as general non-target screening tests. So what that means is when you bring a new product to the market, you do a general non-target screening test. And you do that because you want to see what's in the product, right? You don't just test for what you think's in there, you test for everything. And that's the GCMS test I already told you about. So if they had done that test before they started selling this product, or at any time while they were selling this product, they would have found the hydrazine just like the FDA did. Okay. And then quality assurance. We talked a little bit about this during jury selection. We're going to be bringing in a quality assurance expert. I'll talk about her in a minute. They had 4 or what I would say is non-existent quality assurance. I think you will be surprised when you hear the evidence on this. Next, Shane. So there were a number of customer complaints. We're going to bring a couple of them to you, a couple by video, one live. I mean, serious customer complaints. Didn't investigate or review the manufacturing process. One of the reasons for that is the complaints went to the sales department, not the quality assurance department. Okay, next. And this, I think, is the worst thing they did. This is the worst thing they did. We're going to bring you a witness, Anthony Randolph. He's the former vice president of sales. I think in 2015 or 16, he went on some kind of independent contractor or percentage arrangement. But he was the former vice president of sales. He was still involved in the company in the fall of 2020. He personally knew about a couple of people who got sick from drinking the water. He personally knew. The company was being called. There were a number of phone calls made, flurry of complaints. He begged them, if you recall. I'm going to get to his testimony in 1 second. So these are the 4 items of bad conduct. Let's go through them each real quick, Shane. So failing to test the product before the sale started. This is a pretty unusual manufacturing project. You know, kind of like a Frankenstein type of arrangement where you juice this thing 8 hours, you know, pretty unusual manufacturing process, all right? Especially when you're using this type of unusual manufacturing process, test the product before you sell it. That's what we think they should have done, and we're going to call an expert to say exactly that. Okay, next Shane. Again, that's the GCMS machine I talked about earlier. If they'd done a GCMS, they would have found the problem early on. Next. And this is a cheap test, okay? This is not something you got to spend millions of dollars to do. $200 to $1,000, hundreds of labs in the United States. You know, again, like I told you, this is what the FDA did on the concentrate back in Cincinnati. They ran it through one of these GCMS machines. So if they had spent this kind of money, take a look at the beginning, but they didn't do it. They didn't do a non-target screening test anytime. Next, Shane. And we're going to call the inventor here. His name is Mr. Marlowe. He's a relatively older gentleman. And he's going to tell you that they should have done a general test. He invented this product, the way to make it. He actually made the concentrate for a while. He's going to tell you they should have done the test. And so the FDA test I showed you already on the hydrogen. Next. So quality assurance. A lot of you know a little bit about that from your various jobs. You can bring your backgrounds into the jury room. Next, this is Dr. Hutt. So Dr. Hutt is she's what we call a quality assurance expert. She helped develop the food and safety standards that are used today, the quality assurance ones, I mean. She's working for the federal government at the time. After leaving the federal government, she's done quality assurance for McDonald's, Yummy Foods, Coors Beer, dozens of others, okay? Next. So she studied the real water manufacturing process, and she analyzed the attempts that they made at quality assurance. Next. So she found that there was a complete lack of quality assurance there. Next. The receptionist. Who is the receptionist? The receptionist is this woman named Patty Converse. I'm going to show you a slide on her in a minute. Converse, C-O-N-V-E-R-S-E. They hired her to be the receptionist. 6 weeks later, she was the quality assurance director. 6 weeks later, okay? She had absolutely no training in quality assurance, no experience in quality. She wasn't qualified for this. Dr. Hutt's going to tell you that. She's going to tell you that. She was the quality assurance director for the next 2.5 years. Next. Then they had a written warning. So what happened is some of these big companies, Costco coming to mind, they send inspectors every year to every product that's sold at Costco, that's inspected every year by a third-party inspector. And in this case, it's a third-party inspector called NSF International. So NSF International went into the real water plant multiple times, from like 2014 to 2020. This is their inspection report from December 6, 2018. And this is given to Real Water. Okay, Real Water is given a copy of this. This is what they find in what's called the HACCP section. Okay, HACCP is a quality assurance management system. It was developed by NASA with the use of space program, and it's been adopted by private industry since then. And so when we talk about quality assurance and HACCP, it's pretty much the same thing. So these are the bullet points on HACCP, okay? Look at these scores, okay? 0 out of 20, they get a 0. 0 out of 10, they get a 0. No formal HACCP training. She was the receptionist, had no training, all right? There's no flow chart, there's no process flow chart. All these things are critical to analyze whether you're making a product, right? 0, 0, 0, 0. Next. So their total score out of 150, 6.7. 6.7. Okay? That is not good. Dr. Hutt's going to explain this to you. But there was a finding during this audit that was even more alarming. Even more alarming. And then this is HACCP, hazard analysis, critical control points. So you walk through how the product's made and you analyze all these. Okay? So she should explain this to you. Next. This is on the report. Given to Real Water. There was no qualified individual to provide a level of competency necessary for production of clean and safe product. Note the QA director has resigned. Nobody there. They had no one in the facility that could make a clean and safe product. You're a bottled water company. You have no one in the entire facility that could make a clean and safe product? I don't know what could be more alarming. In any event, despite getting this type of finding, no GCMS test. No GCM test whatsoever. Next, Shane. The prior incidents, again, these are the common signs. So if you get a customer complaint, and nausea and vomiting is caused by a lot of things. Dizziness, weight loss, vision is caused by a lot of things. But when you get customer complaints over and over again in these particular areas, and you don't do anything about it, and we're going to present a lot of the customer complaints to you. I don't know how much time we're going to spend on it, but we're going to present them. So they didn't document and investigate prior incidents. Like I told you before, instead of giving it to the quality control director, it went to the sales department. And their solution was to give these people free water. That was the solution. Let's not investigate a complaint of gas-like substance. Let's give it free water. Next one. This is the receptionist. I told you about the receptionist. She worked as a receptionist. Go ahead. So she was hired and she's a nice woman. Okay, I don't want to say she's not a nice woman, but she's not a quality control director. So 6 weeks later, they make her the quality control director. So she's the quality control director for 27 months. Next year, no experience, bottled water, no experience, quality control. And, she will tell you, I don't know if we're going to play her deposition and get her live, but she's going to point blank admit she was not qualified to be quality control director. She's told to address complaints by sending them free water. This is your quality control director? Send people free water? Don't figure out what's going on wrong? Next. Mr. Desitel, I think you can tell already he's a former Marine, okay? He was actually a drill sergeant. He's an interesting fellow. But he's going to come in. He was hired by Real Water in 2017. And they told NSF, the inspector, and other people, that little card that said Mr. Desitel was the quality control director, quality assurance director. But they didn't tell him. They didn't tell him he was the so-called quality control director. He thought he was the production manager. In any event, he wasn't told about any of these customer complaints that we're going to tell you about next. And he's going to tell you, if he had known about these customer complaints, he would have shut the line down. He would have stopped that line and done an investigation. Next, Jane. So she saw maybe one of the complaints, I think. She didn't see the bulk of them. She's going to tell you that. Next. Free water. Next. And we're going to bring in the man. In 2008, he was in the hospital for a week. And he's going to tell you about the email his wife actually sent to Real Water. Okay. He's going to be on the witness stand. His name's Watkins, Steve Watkins. Next. And Mr. Desitel, if he'd just been told about the 2018 report, he would have stopped the production and done an investigation. But again, he wasn't even told he was the quality assurance director. Next. So, and he's also going to tell you what the owners of Real Water told him to do. Come hell or high water, don't stop the production line. Mr. Desitel will tell you that was the instruction he was given. No matter what happened, keep pumping out the water. Next. Dr. Hutt, these are going to be her opinions in the case. Should have done the non-targeted screening testing, the GCMS. Next. Didn't do it. It's common in the food industry, okay? You know, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a product that's sold in a lot of these stores. LCMS is a test. That just means, remember I said GC means gas chromatograph. LC means liquid chromatograph. So instead of, they kind of heat it up and they test the gases, liquid, they pour stuff on it, and it's supposed to be a little more sensitive. And they're moving away from the GCMS to the LCMS because it's a little more sensitive test. But they didn't do it. So they should have done it, especially after getting these complaints like Mr. Watkins in 2018. Next. I already told you about the FDA tests. Next. So this is the fourth point. And again, these are all the reasons we think they should be held liable for punitive damages, to check the yes box. This is the fourth point. And this one, I think is the most upsetting, at least to me. Next, this is Blaine Jones. He was the son of the owner. The son of the owner. He was involved with the production for almost a decade, in charge of the overall production. He was the one, remember I told you the same person made this concentrate in the secret concentrate room? This is the guy that made it. Okay? He drank Real Water. You're going to hear the testimony in a second. He went on a hunting trip in October of 2020, maybe late September. And so he took a couple of these 5 gallons up with him to drink. And while he's on the hunting trip, he got acute liver failure. He got acute liver failure. And he's going to tell you how bad it was. Okay? And before we play this testimony, what greater evidence could there be of actual knowledge of a problem with the product than that you, the employee that's making the product, you get sick? What greater actual knowledge could there be? Next, please.
The pain, confusion, and fear I have learned about acute liver failure and hepatitis over the last few weeks invokes the old phrase, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. The pain, confusion.
Okay, so basically you started getting sick that afternoon, right?
Correct.
And you say, quote, nausea came over me that night, unquote. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And in the morning, you had what you thought was, quote, food poisoning, unquote, right?
That's what it initially felt like, yes.
Okay. Skipping over a paragraph, it says, quote, next time I remember being wheeled down the hall into a room with a doctor
over the next few hours, I was given variety fluids. Next, the doctor told me my liver was shutting down and the next few days would be very painful. Did I read that right?
Looks like it.
So this would have been on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. So Tuesday, a doctor told you that your liver was shutting down, correct?
I believe that was what the doctor said, yes. If I remember correctly. Again, I was pretty out of it, but as far as I can remember, yes.
That you started getting worse at home. That's what it says.
Yeah, over the next couple of days, I mean, as
Over at
the,
GoFundMe page, he wrote a GoFundMe page after the incident. So when I say it says, and read here and read this, I'm referring to his GoFundMe page. That's what's going on. Go ahead.
and as the doctor told me at the hospital that the next few days were gonna be very hard, and I definitely did continue to get worse.
Okay, you got worse than you were when you were in the hospital, when you were stumbling 15 times, walking 100 yards to the hotel?
Yeah.
You were worse than that even?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I was throwing up blood and not able to hold anything down, and
So anyway, they checked you into the hospital, all right?
Yep.
And you say, I was diagnosed as critical and rushed into the ICU. That would be the intensive care unit?
Yep.
So they checked you into intensive care?
Yep.
Okay, and it says what they did know was if I had gotten worse, the only option was a liver transplant, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And did they discuss a liver transplant with you?
Yeah, a specialist came in and he said that there was a short amount of time where he was debating whether or not to send me to California for a liver transplant.
The same person made the concentrate late September, early October 2020, drinks the water, gets sick, so sick, he's in the hospital in ICU. They tell him you have to have a liver transplant. So what happens next? What happens next? Shane? This is a written answer that Real Water gave to the FDA. The FDA came in February, March, and they said, okay, well, when did you first start getting complaints? When did you know that there was something going on here? So look at what, this is what they told the FDA. This is going to be an exhibit, it's going to be exhibit 60. This is page 745 from exhibit 60. So during the period of October 15th, November 15th, 2020, October 15th, 2020 is the start. This is after Mr. Jones gets out of the hospital. The production manager is getting all the complaints. They're getting so many complaints of people getting sick that they assign one employee to answer all the calls. 25 to 30 calls regarding odd tasting water. 12 to 15 customers canceled and are given refunds. Odd tasting water. So October 15th, 2020. What happened after that? Mr. Jones, he's in Utah. This is the same guy I just showed you, same guy, the guy in the next country. He's in Utah, October 5th. Customer complaints are funneled to Mr. Brown, October 15th. He posts his GoFundMe, October 25th. Next. Then they have the meeting on the voluntary recall. And again, Mr. Randolph, he's the vice president of sales. He's going to come in and he's going to say, not once, but twice. He went to the Real Water executive offices and he said, I know a number of people, some or even relatives that have got sick. You got sick, Blaine. We've got to do a recall now. So he went in, first time they told him no. He found out more people got sick, more people they knew got sick. He went back in several days later, begged him again, do a recall. The answer was no. Okay, next. Finally, the FDA comes in, March 16, 2021. That's when the recall happened. The FDA made them do the recall. So all that time goes by. And let's fit that timeline into the context of the babies. October 15, 2020. October 15, 2020. 1 month later, the first baby goes to Summerlin Hospital, 7. 1 month later, Chris Noah Wren. 35 days later, Hera Carrier. Almost 6 weeks later, Lyric in London. After the vice president of sales is in there begging them to do a recall. Next shake. Again, here's the date. There's the date. This is a written document that they gave to the FDA. Okay. Mr. Randolph. Here's Mr. Randolph. I think we're going to have him Wednesday. It might be Tuesday. Formerly the VP of sales. He was still involved in sales on his accounts. He learned of all the people getting sick late September, early October. Went to the real offices twice. He begged them to start the recall. Next. He told Blaine Jones, quote, "It has to be the water," unquote. Told that to Blaine Jones. They refused to do the recall, and they delayed until the FDA came in March to do the recall. No recall in October, no recall in November, no recall in December, no recall in January, no recall in February. Not till the FDA do they do a recall. Okay? Next. And again, this didn't have to happen. None of these babies needed to get acute liver failure. None of these babies needed to go to the hospital at all. They'd done a recall October 15th, a month earlier than the first baby. This wouldn't happen. And we think that that is wrongful conduct that merits punitive damages. Okay, the verdict form. So like I said, primary question in the case is what are the damages? And I'm not going to get into amounts now, but I am going to emphasize one point. Go ahead, Jim. This is from Severance again. Just like they were telling Mr. Jones that he would probably have to have a liver transplant and fly to Salt Lake, they had discussions with all the parents of all the kids about having liver transplants. You know, the doctors in Salt Lake were heroic. The treatment they gave was fantastic. And because of that, none of the children had to have liver transplants. Thank God. But that was a potential. That was discussed. These parents spent weeks thinking about the possibility. They had to sign consent forms for this operation. And again, it's the only treatment option. Next, that's the liver function. I did a chart to kind of give you the ranges. I took the highest one from each person. Now, highest doesn't automatically mean they were the sickest, but the elevated liver function tests like these are really unusual. You know, Severin, his highest was 3,009. Chris Noren, 4,100. Hera, so she wins. She's the winner here, 12,000. Okay, I mean, not a very good prize, but she's the winner. Lear, London, you know, like I told you, they all had stays in the hospital about the same amount of time. So let's talk about, didn't have to have liver transplant. Okay? Luckily, none of the 5 had to have liver transplants. But there's going to be evidence about permanent injury. Okay? Next. This is an article, this is a picture from an article that's going to be an exhibit. And when I say article, I'm talking about a scientific article. This was actually an article published by a number of scientists from Loma Linda to Stanford. They have a little facility here that they treat people. So they saw 4 people that drank real water that had acute liver failure. None of the 4 in this case, different people. And they did liver biopsies in all 4 of them. And so they published this scientific paper It's gonna be an exhibit, you'll have it, and it's generally referred to as the Burke paper, B-E-R-K, and that's named after the lead author, Dr. Burke. She's a scientist up there in Stanford. So when you hear the Burke paper, we're talking about this paper, and more specifically, we're talking about these tissue slides, all right? So what you're seeing on the screen is you see the little A, B, C, D, E, F there. Okay, these are separate liver tissue slides from different people. Okay, A is one slide, B is another slide, C is another slide, and we're going to call two witnesses that are going to talk about these. One is going to be a pathologist. So these are two of the Burke slides. Now take a look at the blue. You see that blue? So they're going to tell you, the pathologist and Dr. Hudson, to a lesser extent, is going to explain what blue on a tissue slide is. And basically, it means permanent scarring, bridging fibrosis. So blue is that. So again, they did the liver biopsy on these people from Stanford, just like they did on Severin and Hair Carrier. And they pulled out tissue sample, and this is what they found. Pathologist, like I said, we're going to bring a pathologist. Permanent injuries, bridging fibrosis, I'm going to explain that in a second. That's a permanent scar on the liver portals. Okay, some of you may have heard the term cirrhosis before in connection with the liver. Cirrhosis is bad. When you get to the state of cirrhosis, your liver is, it's just not a good condition to be in, okay? You don't have very much liver function at all. So in this case, we have a diagnosis of bridging fibrosis for Severin. So what is bridging fibrosis? First of all, it's very rare in children. Remember, Severin's 22 months old. 22 months old, and he's already got bridging fibrosis, a condition that usually doesn't develop until the 50s or 60s, okay? And you know, I've already said Severin and Hair had biopsies next year.
The council can come approach. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our mid-morning break, come back at, let's say, come back at 11:15, so 20-minute break. During this recess, you're admonished not to talk or converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not read, watch, or listen to any report or commentary on the trial or any person connected with this trial by any medium of information, including without limitation to social media, text, newspapers, television, internet, radio. Do not visit the scene of events mentioned during the trial. Do not undertake any investigation. Do not do any posted communications, i.e. social networking sites. Do not do any independent research, including internet searches. Do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until a case finding submitted to you. See back at 11:15.
Please rise for the jury.